It was early morning when the first flakes of snow began to fall. At first they were light and soft, dusting the ground like a gentle whisper of winter's arrival. But as the hours passed, the sky darkened, and the snowfall grew heavier. What had started as a quiet day quickly turned into something far more dangerous. Along a lonely stretch of highway stood a small diner. It was the kind of place people passed by without much notice. A simple building with a warm glow shining through the windows, offering a little comfort in the cold. The diner was run by a black owner, a person known in the community not just for good food but for a big heart. The diner was more than just a business. It was a refuge, a place where truckers stopped to rest, where locals met for morning coffee, and where stories were shared across tables worn smooth by years of hands and hope. That day, the owner was busy behind the counter, flipping eggs and pouring coffee for a few early customers. The radio in the corner crackled with weather reports, warning of a blizzard moving fast across the region. Still, the roads were open and life went on. Outside, the snow started to fall harder. The wind picked up, pushing the flakes sideways and making it difficult to see very far. Drivers on the highway slowed down, but the storm was gaining strength faster than anyone expected. About an hour later, a group of 10 truckers pulled their big rigs off to the side of the road near the diner. Their trucks were heavy and loud, but even those massive machines couldn't fight the storm. Visibility was poor, the road slick with ice, and continuing forward was too dangerous. The truckers looked worried. They had miles to go and schedules to keep, but nature had other plans. Seeing their trucks parked outside, the diner owner stepped out into the cold to greet them. "Come inside," the owner said firmly, voice warm despite the chill in the air. "You're not safe out here." The truckers looked surprised but grateful. They had been cold, hungry, and worried about the night ahead. One by one, they climbed down from their trucks and entered the diner, shaking snow off their coats and hats. Inside, the diner was a welcome warmth. The smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. The owner immediately began serving hot food and drinks, moving from table to table with a steady calm that made everyone feel at ease. The truckers settled in, some rubbing their hands to warm them, others stretching tired muscles after hours on the road. The owner didn't just bring food. There were blankets for those who needed extra warmth and chairs pulled close to the heaters. Outside, the wind howled. The snow fell thicker and heavier, turning the world white and silent. No one could leave the diner until the storm passed. Inside, a different kind of warmth grew. The truckers started talking. Stories came out. Some about long journeys across states, others about family waiting at home. Laughter broke through the tension as they shared jokes and memories. The diner owner listened quietly, offering kindness and respect, never rushing, always ready with a smile or a hot cup of coffee. One trucker, an older man with a graying beard, looked at the owner and said, "You've saved us tonight. We might have been stuck out there freezing and alone." The owner shook their head. "We all need help sometimes. It's no trouble at all." The night wore on. The blizzard showed no signs of slowing. But inside the diner, time felt safer and easier. The truckers weren't just strangers. They were a small community brought together by the storm and the kindness of one person. The owner didn't stop working. Plates were refilled, coffee pots were topped up, and blankets were offered again and again. Every person was treated like family. Outside, snow drifted past the windows in waves. Cars passed by slowly, some drivers nodding in respect as they saw the line of trucks and the bright lights of the diner, holding strong in the storm. The owner glanced outside once and thought about the risks taken. Running a small business in bad weather wasn't easy. The roads were dangerous and not many people were stopping. But helping those truckers felt right. The diner was a small place, but it held big heart. Hours later, the storm finally began to ease. The wind softened and the snow slowed to a gentle fall. The truckers started to gather their things, preparing to get back on the road once it was safe. Before leaving, the truckers lined up near the door. The older man spoke again, this time louder for everyone to hear. "If it weren't for this place and the kindness here, we don't know what would have happened tonight." "Thank you," the owner smiled, brushing off the words. "Just doing what anyone would." The truckers nodded, but their eyes told a different story. They saw the hard work, the warmth, and the care it took to keep that diner open in the storm. As the last truck pulled away, the owner locked the door and looked out at the road. The blizzard was fading, but the memory of the night remained. It wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about what people could do for each other when the world got tough. Little did the owner know the next day would bring a surprise, one that would change everything. The snow kept falling hard outside. The wind howled like a wild animal, and it was bitter cold. The roads were covered in thick white snow, making it almost impossible for cars or trucks to move. 10 big trucks were stuck on the highway just outside the small town. The drivers inside those trucks were cold, tired, and worried. They didn't know how long they would be stuck. Some of them were carrying important goods that people in other towns were waiting for. The thought of losing their deliveries made them more anxious. But the worst part was the cold. Their heaters were running low on fuel, and the freezing wind was sneaking through every crack. Not far from the highway was a small diner. It was a cozy place with warm lights glowing through the windows. The diner was owned by a kind black man who had lived in the town for many years. He was known for his big heart and even bigger smiles. The diner was a favorite spot for locals to come for good food and good company. But on this snowy night, the owner was worried. When he heard on the radio that several trucks were stuck just outside town, he felt a pull in his heart. Without thinking twice, he decided to keep his diner open late to help anyone in need. Inside the diner, it was warm and smelled like fresh coffee and fried food. The owner was busy in the kitchen, making sure there was plenty of hot soup, sandwiches, and coffee ready. The diner wasn't very big, but it was filled with booths, a counter with stools, and a few tables. As the snowstorm got worse, the first truckers slowly started arriving. They were shivering and covered in snow, their faces tired and worried. When the diner owner saw them, he welcomed them with open arms and a friendly smile. Come in," he said kindly. "You must be freezing. Get warm by the fire and have something to eat." One by one, the truckers came inside. They took off their heavy coats, and the warmth of the diner started to bring color back to their cheeks. They were grateful to find shelter from the storm. The owner gave each one a blanket and made sure everyone had a hot cup of coffee or tea. Some of the truckers were too cold to speak at first, but the owner's calm voice and gentle manner made them feel safe. As the night went on, the small diner was filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. The owner didn't just give them food. He shared stories and jokes, making everyone feel like they were family. The truckers started talking to each other, sharing where they were headed and what they were carrying. The mood lifted despite the storm outside. It was a simple moment, but it meant a lot to everyone there. One trucker, an older man with a kind face, told the story of how he had been on the road for days, far from home. Another, a young driver just starting out, talked about his hopes to build a better life for his family. The diner owner listened carefully, asking questions and encouraging them. It was clear he cared deeply not just about feeding them, but about their lives and struggles. Outside, the storm showed no sign of slowing. The wind pushed against the windows and the snow piled up higher and higher. The roads were still blocked and the trucks wouldn't be able to move until morning. But inside the diner there was a warm light of hope. The kindness of one man had turned a scary night into a moment of comfort and safety. As the hours passed, the owner didn't think about closing up. His only thought was to make sure everyone was okay. He cooked more food, filled more cups of coffee, and even found extra blankets from the back room. The truckers, in turn, helped clean up and kept spirits high. It was a team effort born from kindness and respect. One of the truckers, a woman who had been quiet all evening, finally spoke up. She said, "This is the nicest thing anyone has done for me in a long time. Thank you for caring." The owner smiled and replied softly, "We all need a little help sometimes. Tonight this diner is here for you." The night went slowly, but it felt peaceful inside. The fear of the storm outside seemed less scary with friends around. Some of the truckers even began to dream about the warmth of their own homes, their families waiting for them. For a few hours they could forget the cold and danger. By the time dawn started to break, the storm began to calm. The snow was still thick on the ground, but the wind had died down. The owner looked outside and saw that the highway was still covered, but the sun was shining weakly through the clouds. It was a new day. The truckers started to get ready to leave. They packed up, pulled on their coats, and thanked the diner owner over and over. Their gratitude was deep and real. They had come in as strangers, cold and scared, and left feeling like they belonged. One trucker said, "I don't know what we would have done without you. You saved us from a terrible night, Another added, "You have a good heart. Don't ever forget that." The owner nodded, feeling both humble and proud. He waved goodbye as the trucks carefully started their engines and slowly moved out onto the snow-covered highway. He watched until they were gone, hoping for their safe travels. After they left, the owner went back inside and cleaned up the diner. He felt tired but happy. The night had been long, but the warmth of kindness made it all worth it. Little did he know this night would change everything. The truckers he helped would not forget his generosity. They would share the story with others, and soon, the small diner would become a symbol of hope and kindness in the community. The owner sat down for a moment, sipping his own cup of coffee. He smiled, thinking about how one small act of kindness can brighten even the darkest night. The night was cold and harsh outside, with the wind howling like a wild animal. Snow whipped around the streets, making it hard to see even a few feet ahead. But inside the small diner, there was a different kind of storm, a storm of kindness and hope. One by one, the truckers started arriving. They had left their big rigs on the side of the road because the roads were too slippery and dangerous to continue. Some of them had walked for nearly an hour through the freezing cold, their boots crunching in the snow, faces red and numb from the wind. As the door to the diner opened, the warmth and light spilled out like a safe harbor in a stormy sea. The owner greeted each trucker with a smile that reached her eyes, a comforting glow in the middle of a frightening night. She didn't ask for money or IDs. She didn't care who they were or where they came from. All she saw was people in need, cold and scared, looking for shelter. The diner was small, but it had a big heart. She moved quickly, putting on the kettle to boil water for tea, pulling out blankets from the back storage, and making sure there was enough food to go around. The truckers sat down on worn wooden chairs, some rubbing their hands to warm them, others just breathing in the hot air that filled the room. One driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked around and said softly, "Thank you. I wasn't sure we'd make it through the night." Another, younger and shivering, nodded. "We were stuck out there. The snow just came too fast. If you hadn't opened your doors, I don't know what we'd have done." The owner just smiled, her heart full. "No one should have to face a storm alone," she said. "You're all safe here. Rest as long as you need." She went behind the counter and began making sandwiches, heating up soup and brewing fresh coffee. The diner's usual hum of conversation was replaced by quiet conversations, soft chuckles, and grateful sighs. Strangers became friends in that little space, sharing stories about their families, the roads they traveled, and the lives they lived. One trucker pulled out a small photo from his wallet, a picture of his daughter. "I just want to get home to her," he said quietly. The owner nodded, understanding the worry and love behind those words. She brought him an extra blanket and sat with him for a moment, listening. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, the warmth grew stronger. The diner felt like a small island of kindness surrounded by a cold sea. The owner kept checking on each trucker, making sure everyone had what they needed. She noticed the little things, the driver who kept coughing, the man who looked like he hadn't slept in days, the woman who seemed scared and kept hugging her coat tightly. She didn't say much, but gave them space, food, and a comforting smile. As the night went on, the truckers helped each other too. They shared snacks, helped with blankets, and told stories to keep spirits high. The owner watched this and felt proud. In a world that could sometimes be harsh, here was something pure, a group of people looking out for one another, all because someone opened her door. Near midnight, the local volunteer fire department arrived, bringing extra blankets and some warm drinks. The owner had called them earlier, hoping they could check on the stranded travelers once the storm eased. Now, with their help, the truckers prepared to get back on the road, but the owner insisted they wait a little longer just to be safe. Before leaving, each trucker took a moment to thank the diner owner. Some tried to offer money, but she refused, shaking her head firmly. "Just take care of yourselves," she said. "That's all I ask." One trucker with tears in his eyes reached out and squeezed her hand. "You don't know how much this means to us," he said. "You saved us." She smiled, but inside she felt the weight of those words. It wasn't about saving lives in a heroic way, she thought. It was about simple human kindness, the kind that could change a cold, scary night into something warm and hopeful. As the truckers left, the owner stood by the door, watching them disappear into the slowly clearing storm. She knew this night would stay with her forever, not because of the snow or the cold, but because of the people she helped and the community they had all built. Even if just for a few hours, the storm was finally over. The wild wind had calmed and the heavy snow had stopped falling. The morning sun peeked through the thick clouds, making the frozen world shine bright. The roads were still covered in snow, but they were safer to travel on now. Outside the small diner, the cold air was crisp and fresh. Inside the diner, the warmth wrapped around everyone like a comforting blanket. The truckers who had spent the long, cold night there began to prepare to leave. They put on their heavy coats, tightened their gloves, and checked their trucks carefully. The kindness they had received was still fresh in their minds. They looked at the diner owner with deep gratitude, knowing how much his help had meant when they felt scared and alone. One of the truckers, an older man with a voice full of experience, spoke up. He thanked the diner owner with all his heart. "Without you, we would have been stuck out there all night, freezing and helpless. You saved us. We won't forget this." Another trucker nodded, adding, "This story will travel far. Every driver on the road will know about your kindness. People like you make this world better." The diner owner smiled humbly. He didn't do it for praise or thanks. He had only wanted to help those in trouble. But hearing their words made him feel proud and hopeful. Maybe kindness could spread like fire, warming even the coldest places. As the truckers started their engines, the diner owner watched them go, feeling a mix of relief and joy. They were safe now and the storm had passed. But more than that, he knew their story would travel, carried by the truckers and their many connections. The next few hours were quiet. The diner owner cleaned up and prepared for the day ahead. Soon his phone began to ring. Calls from other truckers, delivery companies, and friends who had heard about the storm and his help started coming in. Each call brought messages of thanks, offers to visit the diner, and invitations to build new friendships. One call was special. A representative from a large delivery company spoke warmly and said, "Your kindness touched many hearts. We want to support your business and work together to help more people like the truckers you saved." The diner owner was surprised but thankful. He never imagined his small act would lead to such attention. Yet he welcomed the chance to grow, to serve more travelers, and to keep spreading kindness in his own way. As the day went on, the news of the diner's rescue spread beyond the roads. Social media posts, messages, and stories from the truckers shared the tale of a small diner with a big heart. People from all over started talking about the black diner owner, who risked his own safety to help strangers on a snowy night. Later that afternoon, as the diner owner was closing up, he noticed something unusual outside. A long line of delivery trucks slowly rolled up one after another, stopping right in front of his diner. Drivers climbed out with smiles and waves. It was a sight he never expected. The truckers and company representatives came inside, bringing gifts, flowers, and words of thanks. Some offered business deals and invitations to join local events. The diner owner's heart filled with gratitude. His simple act of kindness had come back to him in ways he never dreamed of. That evening, as the diner closed and the last trucks drove away, the owner stood outside and looked up at the clear, starry sky. The storm was gone, but what it had brought, a reminder of hope, connection, and the power of kindness, would stay with him forever. He thought about the truckers he had helped, about the cold night that could have been so dangerous, and about how one small choice made a big difference. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about being there for someone when they needed help most. And with that thought, he went inside, ready to face whatever the future might bring, knowing that kindness would always light the way. The storm had finally passed. The snow had stopped falling, and the sun was starting to peek through the thick gray clouds. The roads were still covered in a thick blanket of white, but the plows had been out working hard, clearing paths so people could start moving again. Inside the diner, the warmth and smells of fresh coffee and hot food still filled the air. The truckers who had stayed overnight were preparing to get back on the road, putting on their coats, pulling their hats tight, and checking their phones for weather updates. The diner owner stood by the door watching as the truckers got ready. He felt a deep sense of relief that everyone had made it through the night safely. He remembered how tired and cold they had looked when they first came in. Some had frost on their beards and their hands were shaking from the cold. But now, seeing them smile and laugh with one another, the owner's heart felt full. Just as the truckers were about to leave, a noise outside caught everyone's attention. One by one, Delivery trucks started rolling into the diner's parking lot. At first, there were just a few, but soon the line grew longer and longer until trucks of all sizes were parked outside the small diner. The drivers were coming in groups, many stepping out with wide smiles, waving and calling out to the diner owner. Word had spread quickly about the kindness shown by this man during the blizzard. The truckers had talked among themselves, sharing the story of how he had welcomed them, fed them, and kept them warm through the freezing night. Many of the drivers who had not been stuck in the storm wanted to show their respect and gratitude by stopping by to support him and his business. The diner owner was surprised but happy. He welcomed each new visitor with a warm handshake and a kind smile. Some of the truckers handed him envelopes, others brought baskets of fresh fruit or bottles of syrup for his pancakes. A few brought letters from their companies, thanking him for his kindness and letting him know that the story had touched many hearts. As the morning passed, the diner filled with the sounds of laughter, conversations, and clinking dishes. The truckers told stories of their travels, sharing moments from their long journeys across the country. The diner owner listened quietly, occasionally adding a word of encouragement or a joke that made everyone chuckle. For the diner owner, this day was unlike any other. He had always worked hard, pouring his heart into his small restaurant, but now it felt like his efforts had made a real difference in people's lives. He realized that his simple choice to open his doors on that stormy night had created something much bigger, a sense of community and hope. The truckers who stayed that night were now his friends. They promised to come back whenever they passed through town, and many meant it. The diner had become a symbol of kindness, a place where people could find comfort no matter the weather or how hard life got. But the story didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, more truckers stopped by the diner, many bringing friends and family with them. The owner's little diner started to grow in popularity. People from neighboring towns began to hear about the place where a man's kindness had made a big difference during a terrible storm. Local news stations caught wind of the story and came to interview the diner owner. They wanted to share how one person's good heart could change many lives. The owner, who had always stayed humble and out of the spotlight, agreed to speak, but only to remind everyone that kindness costs nothing, and anyone can do it. The town itself seemed to change after that blizzard. People were more helpful to one another. Neighbors checked in on those living alone, and volunteers organized to clear snow from sidewalks and driveways. The diner owner's actions inspired others to think about how small acts of kindness can spread and create stronger communities. Months passed, and the diner continued to thrive. The owner used some of the donations he received from the grateful truckers to improve the place, fixing the old stove and adding a few more seats so more people could come in and feel welcome. But more than that, he invested in the people around him. He started hiring local teens during the weekends, giving them a chance to learn about work and responsibility. The community grew closer, all because of one night during a blizzard. One evening, as the diner was closing, the owner sat down at a table with a hot cup of coffee. He thought about the journey, from that cold, snowy night when strangers found shelter in his diner, to the long line of trucks that showed up the next day, and the way his life had quietly changed. He felt grateful, not for the money or gifts, but for the chance to help others when they needed it most. He knew that kindness was a gift everyone could give. It didn't require much, just an open door, a warm meal, or a listening ear. And sometimes, when you give kindness without expecting anything in return, life has a way of surprising you. The diner owner smiled, thinking about the truckers who had become more than just customers. They had become friends and part of a story bigger than any one person. He looked out the window and saw the first stars beginning to shine in the clear night sky. In his heart, he hoped that his small act of kindness would continue to inspire others, long after the snow had melted away, and so, the diner stayed open, a bright light on a cold highway, ready to welcome anyone who needed a little warmth, a good meal, or just a place to belong.